יש לנו קפה, יש לנו הכל. That's it. Good morning. With the help of Hashem, we are learning today's 3 Prakim and Rambam. Hilchos, Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav. Prakim Gimel, Dalid, and Hey. Perek Shlishi will be the final chapter about Shofar. We're going to learn in this chapter all about the Seder of the Tkiyas, as well as the Seder of the Barachas. When we say Barachas here, Yakir, we are specifically referring to the Musaf Shmoyna Esrei. Normally, Shabbos and Yom Tov, aside of the first 3 and the last 3, you have one in middle, right? We make a Amida prayer comprised of 7 blessings. On Musaf of Rosh Hashanah, it's 9. The first 3, the last 3, and the 3 Malchiyos, Zechronos, and Shofros, and how the Shofar is interwoven with these barachas. All of that will be discussed in this chapter. This chapter has 13 halachas, beginning with halach aleph. How many shofar blasts must a person hear? Says that Rambam, Teisha Tkiyos, 9. How do you get the 9? Because the word Truah was written B'yovel, and by Rosh Hashanah 3 times. And we have another rule that every time the Torah says the word Truah, Pshuta Lefaneh, it must be preceded, and it must be followed by a single long blast known as a Tkiyah. So 3 Teruahs, but each one is really 3. Whether it is Rosh Hashanah, Bein Yom Kippur of Yovel. In other words, Teisha Tkiyah is taken b'chol echad nishtei, which is Tkiyah Truah Tkiyah, Tkiyah Truah Tkiyah, Tkiyah Truah Tkiyah. Halacha beis Truah zu. Everyone knows what a Tkiyah means. It's a single long blast. What exactly is a Truah? Says the Rambam, Nestapik lanu safek. How can it even be that there's a safek? Lefi oirech hashanu b'reiv hagolos. People ask, so what? Every year we blow the shofar. Shat must be that, as we'll see, Truah is a crying sound. Every golus demands a different type of crying sound. So sometimes people were anguished one way, sometimes people were anguished another way. Then, okay, so how should we be anguished? That's the pshat. What are the 2 options? Option number 1 is, does it resemble the wailing with which the women cry when they moan? Or is it a sigh in which a person who's distressed about something major? Or is it both together? It's both the hanacha and the hayilala. Because we begin with the long oy, and then you go frantic, you know. Yeah, with the laughing is it's better than crying is laughing. But that's golus. And since we don't know, what do? We do it all. Now, which one do we call actual to do what's amazing, right? Because really what we're saying is that anacha, which is what we call today the shvarim, could mean the truah. So even though we have a suffix and we do both, but it became that what do we call the truah? The yalala. The little that. Which is and now let's put it all together. Nimsa seder tkiyas kachu. Levarech tekeyat tkiyah. I'm sorry, and then 3 Shavarim, and then the Truah, and then the Tkiyah. And that's for the first of the triplet. The Chayzik say there is a total of 3 times. V'Tkiyah Tkiyah, v'Achrei Shlosh Shavarim, v'Achrei Tkiyah. The Chayzik say there is a Shalosh Pa'amim. V'Tkiyah Tkiyah, v'Achrei Truah, v'Achrei Tkiyah. Chayzik say there is a Shalosh Pa'amim. You know, so each one 3. Understand? The nimsa minyan tkiyas will now become shloishim kedei stalik v'nasofik. What we call tashrat, right? Tashat, tarat. Halachadal. Shir Truah, how long should a Truah take? The time that it takes to blow 2 tkiyas. Shir shloisha shavarim should be the same time it takes to blow a Truah. Now, but then he blew a tkiyah. so long that really it was like the tkiya after and the tkiya for the next stanza before. That they chashuk state tkiyas, and therefore all you need. Don't say that all you need is v'yireach v'yitka. No, ella filo mashach bar kol hayom. I should know that some people, Yaron, are able to blow while they're breathing in their nostril, because they're blowing only from the breath of their mouth. So you can take a blow the whole day. The mamish blow the whole day. It's only counted like one tkiyah. And then v'chayz v'tekeyah, Maria v'tekeyah shalosh pa. Pasha. Halacha 5. Shoma tkiyah achas b'shah achas. What happens if you did not hear it one after the other? 6 a.m. you heard a tkiyah. The next sounding you heard in the next hour. In other words, it took you the whole day to hear these sounds. No problem. What is essential, as long as they are heard in their proper seder, right? That can be. In other words, you have to begin from the beginning of the stanza. But you heard it mitisha b'nei Adam. Problem is that it came at the same time, all the sounds together. Lo yotza. Afilu yedei achas. But on the other hand, tkiya mizeh, trua mizeh, tkiya mishlishi. You heard it from 30 different people. As long as it is b'zeh chazeh yotza. And even if there were interruptions between each sound, that's the meaning here of seidugin. Afilu kol hayom kuloi. That you have to hear. Because Shakulam it's fa'achasein lefikach ma'ak v'zoyazu. Allah chazayin. Here. How would you touch it, Sirugan? But when it says afilu, I understand that, but here the pshat of Sirugan means that even though the interruptions took the whole day, what cannot be is one on top of the other. As long as it's one after the other. Oh, that's important. And guys, remember, brachos here means musaf shmoyne esrei, just a chap, not the birchas, not the bracha prior to the blowing of the shofar. For example, and then Gevuris and Kedusha Yom, which is the normal first 3 that we always have, unique Musaf Rosh Hashanah, as well as Musaf on Yovel of Yom Kippur of Yovel, is that now there wouldn't be one bracha Kedusha Sayom. No, there's 3 brachas in the middle. Malchiyos, and after you finish with Malchiyos, you blow 3. Then the Shliach Tzibur says Zechroinos v'tekei shalosh. Then the final added is the Shofros v'tekei shalosh. And then the final 3. Avodah Hoidah Birchos Kohanim. For some reason, the Rambam doesn't mention Sim Shalom. Halacha Ches. Sholish brachos Tzos Elo Shel Rosh Hashanah Shalom Kodim Shel Yovel, which is Malchus Chrenis v'Shofros. The brachas themselves are dependent on one the other. Therefore, they are essential one for the other. But Sarach Loimer B'Chol Bracha Mehen. In each bracha, ideally, you should mention 10 psukim that expresses the content of that bracha. And how do you define the 10 psukim? All ideal, lachatchila, 3 from the Torah. In other words, Malchi is 3 psukim in which we have in the Torah describing God as a king. 3 from Sefer Tehillim. Look at the Sefer, not Tanakh, Torah Ksuvim, and the Rambam is writing Tehillim, Dafka, not Ksuvim, Tehillim, and then 3 from Nevi'im. That's 9. You said 10, correct? Because the 10th, the final one, should be from the Torah. However, this is lachatchila. Now, the Hishlam and Navi Yatza. More than that, says the Rambam. The Im Amar Pasuk Echad and Atoida. The Echad is Avin Anavim. You only said 3 psukim. Oichad Yasa. And then even more. Each one is a worse b'di'evet. That Vafilu Amar Uvesirascha Hashem Elikeinu Kasav Leimer. And you said only 1 pasuk of the Torah, and that's it. Shuv Einot Tzarech Klum. Allah Chates. In those days, my friends, that people did not have a machzor. It's good to know that. Because imagine a person, some people can know the whole Tanakh. But then at the moment, you go blank. Okay, so geh weiter. Halacha 9. Ein maskin in zechreinois, malchi yeshafreifois, don't recite psukim that are speaking about Puranuyos, divine retribution. For example, by zechreinos it says, Vayiskir ki basar heima. By malchus it says, K'goyim b'chema shfucha em lech aleichem. By shofars, the pasuk says tiku b'shofar by giva. Something terrible happened. One thing that you don't mention. Another type that should not be mentioned. Even it's lateva. Like you have in Tehillim, Zachreni Hashem, but it's saying Amecha. David HaMelech is speaking about himself. Or Zachre li Elokai lateva. Another rule. The word pikadoin, pikdoinois, Hashem pakat asara, right? So it's correct to say that it's similar to the concept of remembering, but the emes, it's two words. Pikadon means God took note. Zikaron means to remember, and don't quote the word pikadon. Kigoin pakait pokadat yeschem by the goal of Mitzrayim. Don't use that. However, when we said before in the beginning of Halacha Test that don't mention psukim of Puranus, yeah, that's if it's a Puranus of the Jewish people. But yesh lehaskin Puranus shal umas ha'akum. Like for example, Hashem Malach Yirgezuamin. So you have a pasuk in Tehillim. Hashem is a king. Broigis on the Amim. No problem. That could be mentioned. Or Zuchayr Hashem livna yadim es yom Yerushalayim. Or Vashem Elikim Bashoifer Yitka and Vahalach Besadas Teimai. In other words, God is going with a southerly storm wind to take retribution from the Goyim. By the way, we quote this psukim. Now, another thing, even though when we speak about Malchiyos, so you would think the pasuk has to use the words Hashem Malach. It doesn't have to be that way. There are certain psukim that don't use the word kingship, but it's a pasuk of kingship. You know what? You know what that includes? Shema Yisrael, Hashem Elokeinu, Hashem Echad. That is one of the psukim of Malchiyos, because that's the meaning of Hashem Echad. Unlike Hashem Yachid, as we learn in Chassidus. Or it's that there is a world, but the world is being mastered every moment by God Almighty. That's the Ches. Atorei Solodas, even though it doesn't say the word Malchus. Or Veyadata Yem Hashuvay Salavecha. Kol HaPsukim Yeilu, Malchus Hu Inyanoi. Afa Pi She'ein Boi Zecher, technically the word Malchus. V'Arehu Kamoi, it's mamish like the pasuk Hashem Lech Le'elam Vod. Or Vayhi B'Yeshurun Melech, right? That God became king in Yeshurun. They're clear. This is just as good. Next, Halacha Yud. Haminik HaPashat B'Seder Atkiyah Shel Rosh Hashanah B'Tzibur Kachu. If you're davening with the minyan, that's the way it works. After the Torah is read, Umachzirin HaSefer L'Mekoyvay. And by the way, just to add, that means also the Haftorah, but the Sefer Torah is brought back. Nowadays, just to say right away, we already differ. Nowadays, the Sefer Torah, if you remember, is not taken back to the Aron Kodesh. The Sefer Torah are by the bima near the person blowing the shofar. Another thing, nowadays in America, the rabbi gives a drasha. Rambam did not have a drasha. Here, the Sefer Torah goes back, everyone sits down, not to hear a sermon. And everyone answers Amen. Then, like we do nowadays, and everyone says Amen. And then, this is called Tkiyas Miyushav. Nowadays, no one sits, but you could sit. The Torah says 9, because we don't know what a teruah is. So we do 9, we do 3 stanzas of each. And v'oimrim Kaddish. That's the Chatzi Kaddish that we make before Musaf, and then we daven Tfilas Musaf. By the Rambam, by the silent Musaf, no shofar was blown. We do. They didn't. Now, the Shliach Tzibur is repeating the Shemona Esrei. And like we said, not Avos Gevuros and Kedusha. When he begins the 4th, which is Malchiyos, and he finishes it, then Toikei Atkiya, Shloishat Shvarim, Teruah Tkiya Pam Achas. Okay, we don't do that. And Omenek Chabad we do Tashrat, Tarat, Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. The Rambam says no, you just do Tashrat. That's it. And then when you do the 5th bracha, which is a Chreinis, when you finish it, now you do Tashat. Just Tkiya Shvarim Tkiya. That's it. And when you finish the 6th bracha, which is Shoifrais, Achar Shegoimra, you do Tarat. Tkiya Teruah, Tkiya Pam Achas, Ve'goimer Atfilah, Allah Yud Aleph, Ze Shetoikeya, the one that blows the shofar when people are sitting, should be the same one that's blowing. I'll say the brachas when everyone is standing. And he, meaning the guy that's blowing, should not speak between the Tkiyas Miyushav and the Tkiyas Mu'umad. If he did talk, Even though he transgressed, he doesn't have to make a new bracha.
Is he the one who made the bracha, Rabbi, at the
The
beginning?
Rambam is speaking about the one that makes the bracha. We apply it to everyone. Yeah.
There's something like they didn't, but we did. So how did that happen?
Okay, so you have to know that the Rambam didn't begin with this, that the Rambam is paskening how it should be done, but the Rambam is sourcing himself from the oral Torah. There are other opinions and minhagim, and even though the Rambam doesn't rule, but others did pasken, and we don't necessarily follow halachically the rulings of the Rambam. The Yemenites do. We don't. Let's go back. No, nothing began with them. They're taking from the 50 options, they're taking one, do this. But not everyone ruled that way. So you go back to the source and you might follow another line. That's how it works. Halacha Yud Beis. B'din haya sheyisku al kol bracha kol bava mehem shalosh pa'amim k'derech shetokah k'shem yoishvin. In other words, the Rambam is saying, really, also not like us, Yakir. Really, after Malchiyos, you should have done Tashrat, Tashrat, Tashrat. You know what we do? We do Tashrat, Tashat, Tarat. But since we do it every 3 times, we end up doing it. We end up blowing another 30. The Rambam says, no, why not? Ella, Kivin, Sheyotzu, Midei, Safed, V'Chias, Miyushav. We covered all the possibilities the first time around. So why are you giving him Matriach the Tzibur, Lach, Sebem, Kulum, Aseder, Abrachas? Nowadays, that the rabbi gives a sermon, and that's the biggest tircha de tzibura. So if people are already subjecting themselves to the long speech of the rabbi, they can hear another couple of soundings of the shofar. It goes together. Because what are we looking for? We're not looking to cover all the bases. That we did before. We're looking to fulfill the concept that while we make the bracha, after Malchiyos, after the other 2, you blow the shofar. I'll say that brachas. All of the above is only if you're davening with tzibur, as one should. Aval be yachid. Listen to this. Ben shesham al seder abrachas. Ben shelisham al seder. Ben mohamed ben meyushav yatzam. And there isn't a minig. In other words, there isn't a minig for a yachid that was accepted. That's machayiv you to follow. Whatever you do will be good. Final halach of this chapter, halach Yud Gimel. Hatkiyos einon ma'akvus as abrachas. That's very important. In other words, even though guys, we blow the shofar meyushav prior to Shemona Esrei. We blow the shofar during the Shemona Esrei. And Yaron, I'll tell you more, we blow the shofar even during the silent Shemona Esrei. We do that. There are 2 separate mitzvahs. They should be done together, but it's not, if you don't have one, you can't do the other. The brachas and ama'akev the tkiyos. You know what that means? It means you should know that before we had a machzor, there were certain communities in which people were not knowledgeable enough to know how to formulate the blessings of Musaf of Rosh Hashanah. Because all the other brachas people know by heart. This is something once a year, twice a year. When you had Yovel, another one, and you have to add 10 psukim lachatchila, you have to know Tanakh by heart. It's not so simple. So many places they didn't know how to daven. But if you don't know how to daven the Musaf, you should blow the shofar. Many places didn't have a shofar. Now the question is, if you have 2 cities to go to for Rosh Hashanah, in one you have a Bal Tefillah, in one you have a shofar. Which one should you go to? And the answer is to the guy that's to the place that they have the shofar, because the shofar is doiraisa, and the brachas is midrabanan. But you know there's no tekeya. Maybe there's a tekeya, maybe there's no tekeya. Because the tekeyas are medivrei Torah, v'abrachas medivrei shofar. Atkan, the easy chapter for today. The other 2 chapters are going to be fun, but first of all, not to scare people. It's not difficult. You know what I would say is, if you would see the case, very clear. If you would have a picture, not only just learn a couple of rules, and for those of us that learned, we're going to review a couple of words. If it's not too much to ask Kavan, I think there's going to be like 30 or 40 pictures. If you can post it on the chat, so for people that cannot get into the Zoom, and just for the record, and to give credit that Rabbi Evan Yisrael, who sometimes referred to Rabbi Steinsaltz, his Rambam is mamish gevaldik, and he gives you the pictures beautifully. Okay, so we are like the Rambam joined together. Hilcha Shofar, Sukkah, and Lulav. We already explained that Rambam doesn't make it separate because Alpi Nigla, Alpi Chasidus, Alpi Nisted, they're really one thing. They're one thing. Okay, so now we're moving on to Hilcha Sukkah, which is also the 4th chapter of the series. And the Rambam in this chapter is going to speak about the walls of the Sukkah. And in the final chapter today, in the 5th chapter, we're going to speak about the Schach. Very simple. Walls meaning, what's the minimum height? What's the maximum height? What's the minimum width, length? We'll see there's no maximum. what is kosher for a wall, what's not kosher for a wall, etc., etc. This chapter has
restrictions we need to do on ourselves and corporations.
okay. So you don't just want to point out that no doubt about it, both the sukkah and the mikvah, especially mystically, they are more viewed that the purity and the kedusha comes because of the boundary. Because you have to contain a certain amount of water, and water is fluid. So in order to contain it, you have to have a boundary. So maybe mystically more the boundary than the water, more the boundary than the schach. You're saying the same thing, but that's all mystically. Halachically, it's about the schach with the walls. Mikvah, the right amount. But let's go over here. This chapter has 16 halachas, beginning with halacha al. It says that Rambam shir sukkah. Okay, let's go. Required measurements of the sukkah. Gava, height, cannot be less than 10 tefachim, minimum, and there is a max also. V'lo yosef, not more than 20 amas. What about the width, which means the width and the length? V'rachba, not less than 7 tefachim by 7 tefachim, that's width and length, and there is no max. Now it's called Yisrael Ru'uyim Leishav B'sukkah Achas. If you can build a sukkah in which you can fit 1 billion people, it's kosher. There is no max in the size. There is a max to the height. There is a minimum to the height. Now, if it was lower than 10, that picture is a little premature, but leave it up there. Or if it was wide and long, less than 7 by 7, or it was tall yakir, more than 20 ames, kol shuhu. The Rambam wants to make it clear, these dimensions are not only lachatchila, no, they are also b'di'evet. Now, how many walls does a sukkah need? So the Rambam begins by telling you what's not good. If it doesn't have 3 walls, it's not good. And as we'll see, technically, not halachically, it doesn't even need 3 walls. Because the third wall sometimes will be halachically a wall, even if it's not a wall. We'll see how that works. So if a sukkah doesn't have 3 walls, it's possible. Now now we're pushing the limits. Okay, so you need to have 2 and something. Now when you have 2 walls and something, there are 2 options of having 2. Either they are parallel or the 2 are perpendicular. The first case is when the 2 are perpendicular, or they're creating a corner. Now in that case, we will see what do we need to do halachically in addition to the 2 that will make that, that's the third wall. If there's a corner, like the Greek letter gamma, a right angle, in English, perpendicular, where's Fishman? He'll be so proud of me, as that word I learned a couple of years ago. Then, all you need, listen guys, listen to the Rambam. You have to have a board, we're speaking about the width now, right? The height is the height of the other walls. That is a little bit more than a tefach, you'll see soon. And you have to put it a little bit less than 3 tefachim to any one of the 2 sides. You have to see a picture. Now, what am I accomplishing by that? So let me say like this. We just said that the minimum width of a sukkah is how much? Remember these numbers, 7. Sometimes, like over here, leave that picture up. We're going to follow the rule, and that is Yaron. It's called Rubai Kekulai. Yakir, what's the majority of 7? 4. So now what are you doing over here? You only have a board. Now another dip. It's then called Lavud. Lavud means that if you have 2 things, if the space in between them is less than 3 tefachim, it's as if they're congruent. So you're going to put this board a drop less than 3 tefachim from any one of the 2 walls, which means Lavud, since it's less than 3 tefachim. A little bit less. That board is a tefach and a little. So how many tefachim do you have? 4. 4 is the roiv of 7. So that in itself, not according to the Rambam, theoretically is already a wall because it's 7. Even though the other 2 walls are much bigger, doesn't matter. But I have a wall with the minimum width. The Rambam says that's not enough. So aside of you creating the roiv of a wall, for the remaining wall, if you would have made, leave the picture up, Kevin. You have to see it. For the remaining wall, you have to make it sort of sapest. So you're going to have the board, a tefach and a drop near either one of the two walls, a little bit less than 3 tvachim. And for the remaining, you're going to have a tzuras hapesach. In other words, you have the roiv of 7. Now, in addition, the Rambam says you have to have, if you can see the picture of Gavaldik, the picture that gave in a showing is the picture to the left, the tzarech lasis la tzuras hapesach. You still have to make a tzuras hapesach. Why? Because you don't have full 3 walls. Now, the tzuras hapesach will be now considered as if it's a third wall. And show the other picture, Kevan. Show the other picture. And here, the tzuras hapesach and the other picture, you have to see it, is the 4th wall. It creates the 4th wall. But anyways, Shabbos, Shetzuras, and that's machloikes in Shitas Rambam. Anyways, Shetzuras hapesach is a filo kana mikan v'kana al gabeim, and the kana al gabeim doesn't even have to touch it. You have a beam and a beam, and the top one is just over it. That's also considered the tzuras hapesach. Let's go weiter. Halacha gimel. You need to have pictures. You don't need to, but it's very, very helpful. Now, another option of having a sukkah with only 2 walls to begin with, but they're not perpendicular, but they're parallel. See, it's different. Here, you have to have more. You have to have more than what we mentioned before. You see, here, you actually have to have a 7. And now we're trying to get away with the minimum. So before, we only had a total of 4. And the 4 was not even 4. The 4 was 1 and a little. Here, I'm also going to use the same concept. What's the same concept, Yakir? That a wall has to be 7 tvachim, but the way you're going to get 7 tvachim is that the board has to be 4 tvachim and a bit. The board has to be, why 4 tvachim and a bit? Because then you can put it a little bit less than the 3 tvachim to any one of the 2 parallels. A little bit less than 3, 4 and a little equals 7. That's number 1. And then tzuras hapesach for the rest. Yes. You have to see the picture. No, don't do that. Yeah, good, Kevin. Very nice. Yes. A third wall over here without now. Now, one thing, Yakir, if you make a normal wall, there's nothing to talk about. Of course, you can put a third wall. We're speaking about the minimum that you need. What can you get away with? Then here you have to have the doif and has to be already 4 tvachim and a bit. Which means because of lavud, you have 7. But again, you would say 7 is enough. 7 is not enough. That Rambam Vaited holds, in addition, in the remaining part, you have to make it tzuras hapesach. Nudin, Vaited. We're middle of halacha gimel. We got to move, guys. It's very important. The rods of the schach that extend beyond the sukkah. You understand? As long as one wall is going with it. So Kavan has a great picture. If you see it, in other words, you have 3 normal walls. You have to see this, but one wall doesn't go as far as the other. If the schach goes with the farthest wall, all of it is kosher to be the sukkah. Everything is in the sukkah. Anything under the schach is part of the sukkah. Even though in that area, you can argue there's only 1 wall. It's not. It's the area of the sukkah has 3 walls. Behind the picture, halacha dalid tfanish shoya devuka is begaga sukkah. Walls that are touching the roof, but they don't go full down. Now we're going to the next din. Yakir al chazar. What good achis, good asik. Remember that. Yeah. Good asik means the wall goes up. Halacha l'meishim Sinai. Yes, it goes up. For a wall to go down, what we learned is only by eruvin in mayim. But we say we don't say good achas because gediyim boikim boy. So that's not good. So if you have, even though it's touching the ceiling, if it doesn't go, if it's high 3 tvachim, if it's not within 3 tvachim psula, we don't say it's 10 tvachim and make believe it goes down. Now, if it's within 3 tvachim, that's already lavud. Lavud we say. Good achas we don't say. Now the other direction, if the definers had the problem is they don't go all the way up. That's fine, as long as the wall has a height of 10 tvachim. And as we'll see in a moment, you don't even need that. We'll get to that in a moment. Afapi that they're rechekim and agag kama amas shado good asik. But they have to be under the schach. Now, What happens if if the roof, right, if the gag is away from the wall 3 tfachim means you don't have lavud, sula. Less than 3 tfachim, it's considered as if it's underneath it. Another thing, we just mentioned, Yakir, that we say if it's within 3 tfachim from the ground, you're good. Up, it can be open a lot. Another thing, what's the height of a wall? 10. Because of the law of lavud, now you don't even need 10. Why don't I need to have 4 tfachim and a bit? I put it within the ground less than 3 tfachim. So what is that? 7. And then if the gag is a little bit less than 7, because of lavud, no, you can't say good achos if you don't have 10. But this makes it 10. That's it. So tala mechitza shegavoya arba umashu beemtza, as long as it is pachos mishalosh hamach laaretz and uba pachos mishalosh hamach legag. So now you have a total of 10. Kosher. Next, halacha hey. You build a sukkah among the trees, but you're using the trees as walls, kosher or not. Here's the answer. If the strings are strong enough, or if they were not naturally strong enough, we'll see, not to blow so much on the wind, but you tied them with ropes. What's the goal? They should not be shaken by the wind at all times. In other words, the Rambam is tolerating a certain amount of shaking. Where do we draw the line? I don't know. The problem is only yakid if it's shaking the whole time. Another thing, sometimes in between the trees, there's a lot of vacuum, empty space. So you filled it up. You filled the space between the branches with tevin or kash, with hay, with straw. Why? Also tying the straw to the tree so they should not shake with the wind. I guess that is okay. In other words, walls. The big difference between this Pedic and next Pedic is one of the big differences will be that trees, while they are mechuber, are dafkin not good for schach. Walls are good. We'll see. Shekol mechitza. Now, why do you have to tie them? Because shekol mechitza she'eni yochel al'ava baruch mitzuya shel yabasha eno mechitza. Now, lachavav. You make it on top of a wagon, or you make it on top of a boat, being that there's no restriction going on a wagon or going on a boat on Yom Tiv, so then you can even go on an Yom Tiv. Now, in contrast, if you make a sukkah on top of a tree, during Chol HaMoed, there's no problem. No, the problem is that midrabanan you may not go up. Or if you make it on top of an animal, the example he gives is a gamel, ksheda. Elama ve'ein oil la beyantiv. Now I got a lefisha asur la alas beyantiv ve'ilan I got a. Next case. Hoyo mixas hadafanois asuis b'deyadam umiktsas and ilanois. In other words, we're speaking about Yantiv, Yakir. The sukkah is built on top of a tree, but it's not fully supported by the tree. If it's fully supported by the tree, the isur midrabanan of ishtamshus bi'ilanos will go to the sukkah. But if it's supported on 2 things, so is it on the tree or is it on the? It's very simple. Royin, kol she'ilu nitlu ilanos. Still, he if that which you built in the tree, your tree house, your tree sukkah will still stand, then you can go up on Yom Tov. By Yakir, you're not going on the tree to get up there. You have a ladder. Even though it's leaning on the tree, because the tree is not needed. But if you would remove the tree, the whole thing would fall down, then you cannot go on Yom Tov. Simple. Allah has said. Sukkah she'ein lo gag. Sukkah does not have a roof, it's invalid. What do we mean by that? We're not talking about schach now. Keep going. The pictures, Kevan, keep going. Show you how the fun is the Vukas of Bazooka means. If you make it like a teepee, the one to the right, no, there's wall and wall, guys, like this. All the way like this. Or you leaned it to the wall. So there's no roof over there. Now, however, if you have a gag, only a tefach, and you know what the beautiful thing is? I don't even care where that tefach is. Imagine, guys, look at it. This is the wall. This is the wall. This is the schach. And between here and the ground, there's one tefach of wall here. The whole thing is good. How great is that? This is the schach. This whole thing is schach. In other words, what are we looking for? I'll tell you what we're looking for, Yakir. We're looking for something to separate wall, roof. So if from the ground it goes up, is it the wall or is it the roof? If there's even only one tefach on the ground, not one tefach flat, nothing flat, so that tefach is a wall. That means that everything else is the schach. How beautiful. Next case, sukkah gula. Don't get nervous in Gemara. We did a lot of math, but now the Rambam is not going to go into the formulas. So, watch it. If you make a round sukkah, what's the minimum size? The Rambam is not going to tell you the formula. All the Rambam is saying is, we began this Pedic by saying that the minimum width and length is 7 tvachim by 7 tvachim. So if you have a circle, guys, you have to have a circle large enough that inside the circle, you can place a box of 7 by 7. Even though the walls, there is no box. There isn't walls that are straight. It's just circular. Doesn't matter. Even though there are no corners, we make as if. And the beauty is, Yakir, is that the walls are the circular walls. Those are the walls. I'll tell you more than that. When you put the schach on the top, you know where you have to put the schach? On top of this imaginary box. The other things don't even need schach, as we'll see soon. Because of lavud, because of other halachas. Harezuk sheidon. Halacha ches, sichich al gabach sad sheyesh lapat simin. Now let me tell you the issue over here. The issue is very simple. You have a ches of houses, a row of houses, a ches, and in the middle is the courtyard. The houses could theoretically serve as the walls were you to cover the whole courtyard from house to house, from house to house. That's good. Then you have 3 walls. Here the issue is that a person is only covering the beginning with schach. In other words, you're covering half of it. So you have like 2 parallel walls, but you're missing a 3rd wall. The other wall is at the end, but you didn't put schach until the end. So now we're going to learn the halacha. It's called pi tikra yored v'soisim. Pi tikra v'soisim means that you have to see that this type of achsadra, which has pillars upon which you have the frame to put the schach, if those pillars have projections, whether they are going in or whether they are going out, we consider those projections as if it goes all the way down as well. Pi tikra yored v'soisim. And that becomes the halachic 3rd wall. Doesn't matter if they're only nidim b'fnim, or if they're only b'chutz. Kevin, where's your picture? Sheira. I wasn't looking before. Why? Because with patzim, a very beautiful picture. Even though it's what we're trying to create over here for whoever's seeing the picture is that if you're looking straight down, behind there's no wall. But the patzimin is as if it goes down. Now, if lo yoy patzim psula, because now it's like you're making the sukkah in the alleyway. And I mean it kipshuta. An alleyway means yakir a mavi mafulash. If you have an alleyway and you cover the whole thing with schach, you only have 2 walls. That's the problem. Okay, clear. Hope that's clear even without a picture. Next, halacha yud. Now again, we're speaking about a mavi, my friends, that is open from both sides. Mavi mefulish. What's the problem, Yakir? If you put schach over there, you don't have 3 walls. But don't forget that neged hilchas erevin. The Chachamim said that putting up only a lechi or only a koina, even only a lechi, it's as if it's closed. So since it's considered a mechitza, only a lechi, it's not the minimum 7, it doesn't have the height. I think the lechi has to have 10 tefachim. But since it's considered a closure, benegeya, rabbinic carrying, it's considered a doifen. Or lechi, or agaba be'er sheshlei pasim. So if you remember, pasi berois was that on the road from Bavel to Yerushalayim, Aliyas Laregel, they made for the public a lot of wells. Problem is when people went up there, many times they needed to spend Shabbos on the side of the road. You have to have water. So they dug pits. Problem is taking the water out of the pit is problematic because the water is a shusayach. The area around it is a carmelis. Even a so what they did is that they allowed for you to have these right angle, relatively small mechitzas, 10 tefachim tall, I think only 1 amma by 1 amma. There is a certain max of how much space can you have between these 4 corners. even though the majority of it is open, it's considered as if it's completely closed off. That's called pasei berois. If you have a picture, you'll see. In other words, that's the pshat. Don't forget, guys, on Yom Tov, you don't need a lechi. You know why? Because we learned in Uchas Yom Tov, but on Shabbos, it's going to be good. So or upasanelu are considered mechitzas le'inyan Shabbos. So we're going to be consistent. Which is really great. Halacha Yudal. Next case. Next picture. You have a roof, Yakir, and on every corner of the roof, you made just one beam, which you used as a base, upon which you put cross beams. And you put schach. What's the problem? It's completely open. But what did we learn before? Even though we don't say good achis, but yes, we say good asik. You know what the good asik is? That the walls of the building go up. It's going to be kosher. Where the walls? Simple. And the mechitzas hatachtonis go until the ground or within 3 tefachim from the ground. They have 10 tefachim height or more. You got yourself a wall, you can go up until the heavens. Now, halach yud beis, sukkah that has many doors, and not only that, but in the walls there are many windows. Doesn't matter how much of it is de facto open. The chiddush is that's a big thing. You can't have an opening that's more than 10 amas. It can be 10. It cannot be more than 10. Even if you make it Surah Pesach, big thing, guys. Now you have to make sure that for the rest, so that's huge. Because many people think, okay, I made it Surah Pesach. That helps. But only if the sum total of physical closure is more than what's open. If you have more products than the Amud, and you have one Pesach, it breaks the Sukkah even with the Surah Pesach. Halacha Yud Gimel. By the way, now it's very rare people make these openings. We're talking about 15 feet. You know how big? We don't have that. Now, Halacha Yud Gimel. Sukkah Shavira Gavayim Esem Amma. What happens if you made it too tall? And we began this chapter by the simple rules of the dimensions. So what are you trying to do? I'll tell you what you're trying to do. You're putting on the floor something to lift the floor. You're not resolving it by lowering the heavens. You're resolving it by going up. So if you put on the 4 karamuk sasois, it's not considered you diminish the height. Vafilu, you said, I'm mavatalit. Karam uksasois don't become ground. But if you put hay, and you said, I'm leaving it here. I'm leaving it here. It came in your pictures. We're not up to your pictures yet. That will be soon. We're not there. It becomes chile. If you put earth, that's what they used. But also you have to be mavatl. The chiddush is that even if you put down earth, if you did not declare I'm leaving this here, then it's not called a reduction. Now another way to diminish. After Tzukah was told more than 20 amas, your solution here is not by heightening the ground, but since from the schach you have branches sticking down. If you were to measure Yakir to that low edge of the branch, you are not more than 20 amas. So can you say, the hutzin are within the shear? For hutzin yordan l'tei chesed. So here's the rule: if the shade from the hutzin that's in the right place, the low ones create in themselves, by themselves, the minimum amount of shade, as we'll learn in the next chapter, then yechashuk hegag age ava uksheda. And if not, you're not good, because if you need the shade from the schach that's above the shear, that doesn't count. Halacha Yudalid. Now goes your pictures, Kevan. And let me just add, the only rule that we did not learn properly yet is the rule of Doifen Akuma. Doifen Akuma means that there are times that we're going to say that even though the physical wall is far away from where you need the wall to be, sometimes the wall and the schach that eventually goes over the place of the sukkah is considered one wall. So let's go like this. Whoever's looking at the pictures here, it's the top right. In other words, the itztaba, the key is that the itztaba is touching all the three walls. That's the best I can do verbally without a picture. That's the key. This platform, there's three walls. The bench is all the way in the back, and it's touching each side of the wall. Now, 1 second, Yaakov. What we need that the itztaba itself should be at least 7 by 7. You understand? So that is a kosher sukkah. Came on, zoom out over here. But if the bench is only touching two walls, that's going to be the bottom right. No, you're going to the wrong place. The bottom right is only touching two walls. So now that also might be good if we use doifen akuma. No, the third wall is far away, but as long as it's less than 4 amas, we view it as if the third wall is touching that edge of the bench that has no wall near it. So the area of the bench will be good enough. But the Rambam doesn't have to repeat. Yakir, that's only because the area of the bench is 7 by 7. Oh, you're eating on top of the bench. But that is the sukkah. So you can't use doifen akuma psula because you only have 2 walls. Next case. What happens now? That's going to be the top left picture. Whoever's looking at Rabbi Evan Yisrael's Rambam, so if you built a platform in the middle, you know what it means, Yakir? It's missing 2 walls. Chiddush of the Rambam will be is that doifen akuma can be said mikol tzad. You can say it and say it again. So it doesn't matter if from both sides it's less than 4 amas. You're invited good on this platform. If it's l'chol ruach less than daled, you're kosher. So the area of the tztaba is your sukkah. Now, unlike a tztaba that is closed from all sides, when we have the picture of a bench, we're looking really at a wooden block. That's what I understand. It's like a platform. It's a wooden box. Now we're going to speak about an amud. An amud is really like a barrel turned upside down. That will be significant. Amud, you put a pillar inside the sukkah. Again, what's the issue, Yakir? You're speaking about a sukkah whose chach is more than 20 amas taller. So you put a pillar upon which you say, I want to make the sukkah on top of the pillar. Even though it has the hechsher sukkah. What's the hechsher sukkah? That the circular of the pillar is so big, the circle, that within it, you can have 7 by 7. So you have the minimum share. It's going to be psula. But the question is why? Why don't we say that the walls of the pillar are the walls? We don't say that. We don't say that by a pillar. By the house, we said that. We don't say it by a pillar. And now, and you don't have doifen akuma. She'ela mechitzas nikaros. By the case, the Rambam is explaining why is it that when I go on my roof of my house, Yakir, and I put on each side just a beam, I don't need any mechitzas because we said good aches. Because there, those walls are taka walls, people live within them. When you're looking outside the house, you see a wall. Here you see a pillar, and therefore they don't count. The nimsal gaba amud is taka schachoshu b'loy defanois. Beautiful. Halacha tezvav. Now let's go to the opposite issue. And yeah, you can go back to the picture scape. And here it's not taller than 20 amas, it's less than 10 tfachim. So what's the solution? One solution, Yakir, will be is to be choykek in the ground to make it deeper. That's it, the bottom left. You're digging in the ground. What's the issue? I'll tell you the issue again. Do you have walls? Of course, if you dug the whole thing deeper, you're good. Now you have 10. What happens if the area that you were choykek in the ground is not adjacent to the walls? What was the share we needed by the pillar, guys? Less than 4 amas. By less than 4 amas, you say, doifen akuma. Here, there's no doifen akuma. Here, the only way we can count the walls as walls is if we use lavud to say that this hollowed out area, ki'ilu, it's hollowed out all the way until the wall. For that, you have to have less than 3 tfachim. So here, im yesh misvas chakak v'lakoisel, only 3 tfachim. It's going to be puzzle because you don't have walls, even though you are in. So you can be eating in there. You're eating under the schach. The schach is held up by walls, but the walls that the schach is holding up are walls that are not 10 tfachim tall. Only now, it's amazing that we're saying lavu to a hakika. Pachos mikan ksheidom shekol pachos mishloisha hareyu kedavuk. That's the pshat. We can't extend it. Lavu doesn't mean we're extending the hakika. All we're saying is it's as if the wall is right by the edge. That's the pshat. We move the walls closer. Final halacha of this chapter. Halacha tes zayid dofnei sukkah kshedim and hakoil. Now we're going to speak about the substance, and this really will be a great hagdama to the next chapter. One of the big nafkaminas between the doifen and the schach is like from what? By the doifen of the sukkah, anything. And you know what? It can even be a balachayim, which means who's a chaya? An adam. Of a oisa adam as chaverei doifen bi yomtiv. Now, for you to sleep, as you have to sleep in halacha, that means that your chaver has to stand there like a goylom. I don't know for how long. Now, there's an issue. You know what the issue is? The issue is this is about Hilchas Yomtiv and about Hilchas Shabbos. That not only is a binyan also isur doiraisa lamates malachas, but binyan aray is also midrabban. So, since you're considering the adam as a wall, so how do you circumvent the issue of binyan aray that the person doesn't know he's being used as a wall? Who sheyasa oisay shaloi ledazeh shenasa doifen. Gavaldik. Aval masol ledas also beyantiv, but amuta b'shayim yachad. For chalamayid you're good. The chain oisa bekelim doifen avias beyantiv. Another din. Now the Rambam wants to add like this, guys. Why is the Rambam saying a doifen avias? Didn't we just say we only need 3 walls? Yeah, shkoyach. But Rambam was trying to point out that since you only have to have 3 walls, when is there isud midrabanan of being an aray if what you are doing is needed? Since the sukkah is anyways kosher without the 4th wall, you can even put the 4th. That's the word. And therefore, how beautiful. All right, Yidalach. Hilchas Shofar Sukkah and Lulav Perek Chamishi is now going to be today's master Perek. Like in the previous chapter, very easy halachas for which many of them will be easy because of pictures. But this will be the chapter about schar. And let's go. Halacha Aleph. We have good time. We can cover the 25 halachas berevach. Halacha Aleph. The Eibishter created coffee for this, for understanding the Rambam better. Haschach shel sukkah einoi kosher mikol davar. So for those who just finished learning the 4th chapter, Gavaldik, in contrast to the previous chapters, Halacha Tes Zayin, that Rambam used the words that Dafnei HaSukkah is kshedim min hakoil. In contrast, the schach of the sukkah is not acceptable no matter what substance it's made from. It is important to know what it's made from. What are the rules? Let's go. Number 1. Has to be something that grew from the ground. We're not done yet. And that is uprooted from the ground. And it's not something that halachically is even susceptible to becoming tamei. I know that we're going to learn really Hilchas Kelim, and we're going to learn Sefer Tada. We're going to learn a lot more about it. But we should remember the general rules that certain things, if they're not yet a thing, or if they were not, even if they're flat, do they physically have a receptacle? That's one issue. Even if they're flat, if they are made for people to lay on or for people to walk on, that's also called a keli. A keli is makabel tumah. Like jumping right away to tachlis, that all of these mats that people put, you have to know what they were made for. If they were made to be a hammock, if they were made to be a mat, they are a keli. Because even though they have no rim, so they have no receptacle, it's just flat, but it was made to hold. If it was made to be a fence, to be a shade, then it's not makabel tumah. Okay, so
unless it has metal in it, correct?
The metal in itself is not the problem. Even though we did learn Kevan that having the schach held up by something that's makabel tumah, which is metal, is not lechatchila okay.
Right.
But there's a lot of room of leniency. The biggest issue of the metal in the mats, Kavan, is that might be an indication that they wanted to reinforce it. They're not spending metal for nothing. They could have put over their rope. They put metal because people maybe want to lay on it, or people you want to make it as a mat. If there's also a function of it receiving someone or something on it, that's called, it was made to be, it's a keli. That's the issue with the metal. But again, if you know that it was made for a fence, even with the metal, we use it, then whatever. There's more to say, but not right now. Number 4 and 5 are not that important. So the first 3 yakir are essential. In other words, gedulim in aretz. Number 2, nekadim in aretz. Number 3, not makabel tuba. This has to be. And if it's not, you don't got to. Now we have another 2 prerequisites that are lechatchila. It should not smell bad, and it's not made out of something which is constantly falling off or constantly withering. That's something that happens very often. Certain types of foliage, mamish, it's gewaltig schach, it's filled, and it's constantly dripping into the sukkah. Halacha base. Now let's go. If we're breaking the first 3 of the 5, any one of the first 3 that are not there, boom, you're not good. Psula. Oh, why the Rambam changes the Seder, I don't know. See, but the last 2, he flips the order. And why is it good? Did the Evid? Because it's like a technical thing. If it doesn't have a good odor, people are going to leave. So lachatchila, don't do it. But essentially, it's good. And then the Eibishter created that COVID. Not the Chinese. The Eibishter did this. And the mila is that you lost your smell. That's a big mila because I guess it depends. If you live in a place where everything smells good, it's a terrible thing. If you live in a place where it's a stinkt, I'm machayim. See, everything has good and bad. Mashiach will moidach v'doim. Mashiach is going to bring back the scent. I think the whole world now lost the scent. Keina hatish. A little bit, a lot. Tzarech lizor, it's just memory. You're having coffee. You remember how it tasted. You convince yourself that you're tasting it. It's gavaldik. Tzarech lizor shelo yeh chutzin v'olen shel schach yom tech. Now there's something else. Oh, so if you have these branches, right, or these vines that are coming in yakir, that's a problem. And we're saying, why is it now? If you remember the previous chapter, remember we said that if something is coming down, if that in itself is not creating more shade than sun, that's not the schach and a hanami. But this technical, you need to have 10 tfachim. 10 tfachim is to make it half comfortable to sit. If it's going within that, you like in the can, you can't. How are you sitting there being poked the whole time? It's mamash, just like you can't have a sukkah with a bad odor. It's the same concept. Don't build a sukkah where you're having tsar sitting over there. Next case, if you used any type of metal for the schach, or if you used bones or hides, psulam. What's wrong with that? Next case, you suspended vines are mechuber lekarka. You suspended the vines over it. Yeah. So it's gedulei aretz. You know what I get? And you have it fully schacht. Not good. Because leinekru. You didn't uproot it. Next case. Sicha b'chlayetz. What happens if you have wooden utensils or mats that were made l'shchiva b'chayetz b'em psula? Why? Mipnei shemekabel tumah. Chein im sicha b'shivnei kelim u'v'lo yoysei hem psula. Now here's a chiddush. What happens if a keli broke? You know, if a keli broke, many times, if it broken off, it loses its status of keli. So wood grew from the ground. It's now uprooted. Why would it not be good? If you have pishtan, or pishtan is gedulim min akarka. That's the garments. And the problem is makabel tuma, but they're worn out. But the Rambam says it's psula. Why? Hoyel v'hoyu makabel tuma. Shema Yisachech b'shvarim shadayin lo'itaru. You have to go and learn Hilchas Kelim, because if that will be allowed, a person will think sometimes, the wooden keli is broken, but really it's still considered keli. The general rule will be is that if every part of the broken is still functional for the same purpose for what the keli was made for, it never lost its tumah. and many other pratim that we'll learn in Sefer Torah. Okay, halacha gimel. So it's like a gzeira. Sicha b'cholin. Now what about food? Yakir. Listen, food is gedule karka, and the apple was uprooted. What's the problem with food, Yakir? It's makabel tumah. I don't care whether it was mukhsh or not. Food is something that's makabel tumah. So makabel tumah. Now, Rabbi Zajac, I have a question. What happens if I have a branch of a fig tree, a branch of te'enim, a branch of soichet te'enim, you got the problem? Or you have branches, vines, and there are grapes on it. No, you have both. You have the wood is good. The wood is not oichel. But you have the fruit hanging from it. You have the eshkoil with the grapes. You have a machbadish, you have a broom that's made out of a palm date, and there are dates on it. Good or not? So Ryan, im soilas merubah lochalin. Forget about tzilosa merubah mechamasa. The Rambam is being lenient. We're not saying that you have to have tzilosa merubah mechamasa only from the branch form. Say, look at that item. If roiv is psoilus, which means not food, we view it all as not food, and therefore masachem behem. That's the rule. Next case, sichech b'yerakois. Now, guys, just people in the Rambam also. Stop a second. Didn't we just say that food is not good? Okay, so you should know that especially by yerakois, and nowadays every grass they'll charge you $1,000 over there in Shiloh's. I'm speaking about many leaves and many grasses. If they're not miyuchad l'maychel adam yakir, they're not meichel. They're not meichel. Okay. Now they're not makabel tumah. You have to understand they're not a keli. What will be the issue of food? That's the type of yirakos. Yirakos that are not miyuchad l'maychel adam. Can you use them? Why not? It could only be nekar, not makabel tumah. These are the three conditions. So he says like this: Im yishu. What's the next word over here? By me, it's erased. Yeboilu. V'lo yishum mamish. If when they will dry out, that's when it will, Yakir. There'll be no substance remaining in it. Even though now they're still moist. See, that's the issue. The issue is that they will become nothing. They shrivel up. So it's as if it shriveled up already. Allah Chadalat. Sicha b'pishtei ha'etz. Using schach branches of flax, but the flax was not yet duk the nipsum. It was not crushed and combed, so we don't consider it to be a fiber. You know what a fiber is? A fiber is makabel tumah. It's not yet makabel tumah. So therefore, it's the moment you did these two steps of duk, of crushing it and combing it, ein mesachin boy. You can ask Akasha 1 second. It's not the fibers yet. It's not. How is it? And even fibers. How is fibers? The problem is only you make a baguette, even by pishtan, at least 3 by 3 fingers. This is nothing. You're right, says the Rambam. But the change that this flax undergoes is so much that it's called nishtanish surasoi uchi'ilu eina megedule karka. That's amazing. In other words, even though it's not yet nekabel tuma, it's not okay. Beautiful. Next case. Nesachin b'chaval shel siv. You may use chach, ropes made out of palm bast, or of chalef, or of hem, otherwise known today as marijuana, sharei tzuras and oimed ve'ena chavalim kalim, because you have the best of both worlds. They're not yet kalim. They don't look that much different from the way it grew from the ground. It doesn't wither away. You're great. Halacha, hey. Now let's go to another common item that people would have then, and arrows. Now, when you have an arrow, really, an arrow is comprised out of the wood and the metal. Metal, we said, is not good. Aside of the fact that many times it can be makabel tumah, but it's already not good because the wood is great. Problem is, if a wood is called a keli. Here, the definition of a keli is a base kibble. What does a base kibble mean? You have to know how was the wood made, which will allow metal to be connected to it. So either it's going to be called zacharim, which means that the wood doesn't have a clay kibble. The wood has a zachar The metal has from the other side a base kibble, so there's no keli in the chetz, in the arrow, kshedo. But the nekevois, which means the wood, if you're looking in the bottom, it's the bottom picture. The wood in itself has a clay kibble in which you insert the metal tip. Afapi that it was made lismalis bebarzo doesn't matter. It's a base kibble. Umekabel tuma kachol clay kibble, so it cannot be used. Halacha vav. Marcellus konim mat of reeds. Or Marcellus gemi raw rubber or mats of hemp. Now we spoke about this a little bit in the intro. Now a mat doesn't physically have a receptacle. It's flat. But if it was made to hold something, it also is called a keli. So if it's kitkana, the presumption is stamal shchiva. If it was made to hold people laying, then lefikachem misachem. Unless you know it was only made for schach. B'doila, if it's very large, since it's very dingy, it's not strong, the bigger, the worse, because something that's weak, if it's very big, anyone, even a child laying on it, will break the whole thing. So, stama l'sichu, lefikach mesachem bo, unless you know it was made l'shchiva. Bamet varamamurim, that the intent will make a difference if it physically doesn't even have a rim, because then it's called flat. Even if it only has a kid means a border, so there's a little bit of a protrusion, that's already called a clay kibble, base kibble. I feel like the clay kibble. And more than that, even it was made with a kid, it was made with the border. Now the border was removed. You didn't improve it. I feel but because it's like a broken keli. Now we learned before. Now, by the way, two things. First of all, broken keli here, it's still functional. But even if it's not called functional, that I'm already paskin that they made that about an exeda that you cannot use shiva kalim because people won't know how much of it has to be broken. Sometimes it can break a little bit, but halachically it's not broken. Allah chazai. The sodom she'em berachim abat fachim boards. Until today, it's like a taiva. You buy a board. It's called 2x4. Buy boards. Can you use boards? So here the rule is like this. If that's the key, it may not be 4 tefachim wide. I want to say right out, 4 tefachim wide doesn't mean, Yakid, that if it's 4 tefachim here, but it's 2 tefachim there, I'll just put it like that. That's not going to help. The Rambam is going to say, because if any part has 4 tefachim or more, if it doesn't have arba tefachim, yes, misachin bahem. And even if they are plain means it was made for construction. It's not raw state. It doesn't matter. There's no receptacle. It was not made to be a clay kibble. No one is sitting. It's made to be built in a building, but it's not cemented in yet. Schach. But that's all because it doesn't have 4 tefachim. The moment berachvan arba, ein mesachin behem, even if it wasn't plain. Question is, why not? Why not? So the Rambam says, a tikra means a roof. You understand? A roof is puzzle as we learn in the next halach. A ceiling. So people will say, that's good, this is good. It already looks like a ceiling. What happens if nasan olel nesen echad sheyesh berach by arba tefachim? In other words, almost all of it, Yakir, is made out of these boards that don't have beroich of arba tefachim. So you're good. One of them has 4 tefachim, doesn't matter. Eloma ve'ein yeshenim tachtov. That's because everything else is good. Doesn't passel the sukkah, but underneath it you can be. Because of this gezeda that if people are going to be using a board of 4 tefachim or more, people will think you can use a ceiling. Now, and we said that before. In other words, the width is 4, but the height is less. So a guy will say, okay, I'm going to put it on the side. Not good. Why? Because once the board is 4, it's not good. Now let's go to a tikra. A tikra means a roof that doesn't have a ceiling. A ceiling used to be made then. Today we have plaster. It was stones and mortar. Avanim and tit was what they would do as a ceiling. So tikra she'ein olam maziva. What's the maziva tit and avanim? You have beams. Now, we learned in the previous chapter, guys, let's make it clear. If the beams are 4 tefachim, we know it's not good. We're speaking about the Nesarim don't even have 4 tefachim. None of the beams are 4. What holds it now? It's nailed in. Tkun. That's the difference between this halach and the previous halach. Atikra, even though it doesn't have a mazeva. If it's tekuyin, psula. The question is why? That's the question, Yaakov. Why? No, it's think about it. The wood. No, there's nothing wrong with the schach being tied down. Why is it psula? Because when you build a roof, and as we'll see, something that was built l'shem bias is not going to be valid. So you know what the solution is? Lefika in peak bake hanasadim. If you moved everything, you understand? You remove the nails, then you're good. Ubavad, like we learned in the previous halacha, we're not going back on what we said before. The sanim that were placed l'shem sukkah, or placed l'shem bias, and I removed everything. It's only good if the nasanim don't have 4 tefachim.
What if you bought the 2x4 l'shem sukkah?
No. We say that when you build a roof, we don't do that. And 1 second, Kevin. Let me go back. If when I placed it l'shem sukkah, I'm good. But I'm saying clearly, even if it was placed l'shem bias, just removing the nails and shaking it is already good, because I'm replacing it. I'm replacing the same ones. L'shem sukkah, your kavanah is what's needed. Now, what happens if you didn't loosen everything? You were only natal echad mi bentayim. V'niach b'mekoy meschach kosher l'shem sukkah. Then you don't have to move the other ones. Harezuk sheida halacha 9 sukkah shenasas kil chasa b'chol makom. The sukkah was made for any purpose. In other words, not for the purpose of a mitzvah, yakir, not l'shem bias, but it was made. We'll see in a moment for shade. Ksheida afa pish lenasas l'shem mitzvah. But so 1 second. So what was wrong in halacha ches that it was made l'shem bias? Exactly. A bias is a house. What is good, even though it's not l'shem mitzvah, something that was made to give shade, that's good. Let's say an example. Sukkah sakum. So it's a sukkah. It was made by a goy. A goy is not making it l'shem mitzvah, but he's making it for shade. Or a sukkah that was made for an animal. By default, that's not called bias. Right? The whole pasuk we have by Yaakov Avinu. That for the mikna he made sukkahs, and for the family he made a bias. That's good. Sukkah shenasas meileo, as we'll explain in a moment, psula, because it was not made l'tzel. Now you understand why. So I'll give you an example. V'chein, I know it's v'chein, but that will be in a clarification. Hachoited begodish. You have, guys, a pile of straw. Straw is a great item to use as chach. When you place the pile, you didn't place it for it to create a shade for anything underneath it, because there was no place underneath it. Now you hollowed out within that pile 10 tefachim, 7 by 7. It's not going to be good. Why? That's why it's not good, and therefore now you'll know how it could be good. If from the outset, when you put the gadish, there was already a halal, you know how tall? Not 10 tefachim, Yakid, only 1 tefach. I know for sukkah it's not good enough. If remember, we learned in the previous chapter by the wall that even if it's in the bottom, it's 1 tefach. Because if there was a tefach underneath it, but a tefach by 7 by 7, and now v'chatat ba, and you made it into 10, now you're good. Because gavaldik, and even though it was never made l'shem mitzvah, I don't need it l'shem mitzvah, but I do need it l'shem tzeh. Halacha. Another din, a rabbinic din, bundles. Everything was bundled. Bundles of kash, right? Bundles of straw, bundles of wood, bundles of reeds. Ein misach in them. Why not? Says that Rambam, it was common that people would bundle these items and they would place it on the roof, not l'shem tzeh. They didn't place it for it to serve any function for that which is underneath it. They would place it because it needed to get dried. What did we just learn? That if you place something on an area, but it wasn't l'shem tzeh, not l'shem mitzvah, it's not good. It was common that people would place bundles for the bundles to dry. That's very common. Someone would say, I have schach already. So they made a gzeira never to use bundles. The molech, a person will say, let's already leave it. And they're going to sit under it l'shem sukkah. And since for whom it chilo liyasel l'schach l'shem tzeil, the Nim says it's called kesukah shenasem elo. You understand? So therefore, the Chachamim said, always, Yakir, always, you cannot put bundles on the roof. But if you put the bundle on the roof and after it's on the roof, you were hitiram, if you unbundle it, it's kosher. Now I need to know halachically what's called a bundle. In other words, if you have less than 25 branches, less than 25 units, if you have less than that, it's not a problem if you put it l'shem sukkah, if you put it l'shem tzeil. But if it's 25, even if you put it l'shem sukkah, l'shem mitzvah, it's not good midrabban because it's bundled. Halacha Yudalev. Anyway, the mats that we have today is not called a bundle. Just to make that clear, it's one unit, it's one mat. Small bundles that were tied together to be sold by number. In other words, Yakir, it was not bundled for it to remain in a bundle. That's the key. It was not bundled for it to remain in the bundle. That's why it's good. Even though it's 25 units or more. What happens if you cut the top of a date palm and the branches are bound to it? So you have many branches. Look at the picture. You have more than 25 branches. You can use it. Why? Why not? You have something. Gedulim in a karka, Yakir. It's uprooted from the karka. It's not makabel tuma. What's the issue? Rabbinically, you can't use a bundle. Who bundled it? Nature bundled it. That's not called a bundle. And even if you wanted to make it more together, so it's bundled where it's connected to the tree by Bidei Shamayim. Even if you add it from the other hand, you tied it up. Also because and that's called 1/8. Why? Because it's agud Bidei Shamayim. And the chain called eged, another did. If the knot is so shvach that when you move it, it falls apart. Now, I know you're not planning to use it. It's not called a bundle, so it's permitted. Again, it has to follow the rules. You need it to have it placed. L'shem tzeil. Halacha yud beis. Let's go. If you make a sukkah under a tree, kilo asomatech abayis. Nish good. What happens if hitla alei ilanus ubadeyem? If you drape leaves and branches of trees over the sukkah, v'sichal gabon, and then you cut them. Now you cut them. So what's the problem, Yakir? So the schach, the part that you cut, was already there. Sukkah shenasem eleh, but you added schach. So if what you added on top of the draped vines prior to bundle was already good enough, not more roif sheidah. Now you have to be menaneya everything after you cut it, because now when you put it l'shem sukkah, it wasn't good schach. Now that you made it into schach, it's already there. You have to place it again. What happens if you made a mixture? You made azai irbuv. Af al pi shah kosher yosel all apostle. We don't say roiv. Before we said roiv is good. Because I'll tell you why, Yakin. Because before the hitla, the gafanim are good. Once you cut them off, the problem is that they're already there. Here it's chach pashel. It's still going to be possible. But that's if you mix them together. But if sichach bazel atzmai, zebazat zeh. So then we say like this: Im yesh b'schach pashel shlosh tvacham amakem echad beim emtza beim natzan reizu psula. Bamed dvarim amurim. That tree ruins it. That's because you are beginning with a sukkah katana. Guys, a sukkah katana, halkab. You have to see the picture. Look at the picture. The sukkah katana means a sukkah that's only exactly 7 by 7. But the sukkah gedola means that aside of the schach pesula, you have 7 by 7 of schach kesheda. If schach pasul is be'emtza, how much of it will invalidate it, guys? 4 tfachim. Amazing. Less than 4 tfachim, even though it's separating mitznei atzadalim ksheda. Umin atzad, even more. We tolerate more because min atzad, we can make a doif and akuma. If you see the pictures, umin atzad place l'bar amas, but less than 4 amas will be kosher. Another day in Baishan, if you have a house which has a roof, a ceiling, which is not good, but in the middle of the house, it fell in. which is great. And now you put schach on it. What's the problem, Yakir? It's far away from the walls. Unlike in the previous chapter, when we needed to have those protrusions, here you put schach on the whole pavilion in the middle of the houses. In all of these cases, let's go to Doifan Akuma. Im yesh misfasas schach hakosher. For amos or more, you got a problem because you don't have walls. But pachos mikan, if it's less, royin ki'ilu hakoisel nekam. Finally, the Rambam writes these words: we view the wall as if the wall goes until the pasal is schach. It bends over. The yechosh of zeh schach pasal is part of the wall. Look, sheder. Let me just add one thing: you cannot eat underneath it because it's a wall. You can't eat under a wall. You have to eat under the schach. Now, this rule of Doifan Akuma says that Rambam Weiter halacha 15, Ezi suka ketana off. Kol she'ein ba elo shiva tvachim al shiva tvachim. O gedolos kol she'ishar ba yoser al schach hapasul. It's gedolos. It's not about more than 7. It's that whenever the halacha that we learned before means that you have a full 7 by 7 of kosher. The halacha tazayin sichech v'dav hapasul of kosher zeh b'tzad zeh. Now, what's the issue of ein b'makim echad b'schach hapasul? You don't have anywhere 3 tvachim, only less. This is gavaldik halachas. So here we go back to the laws of majority. Everything is kosher, gavaldik. But the if it's equal, even if you don't have together apostle 3, you would say you love it, not good. Why? Tell you why. Because chach pasul is as if it's not there. And you know what? You know what happens? Think about it. Even if it's 50-50, if the chach pasul is not there, so what do you have? You have 50% covering. 50% doesn't create majority of shade. You have to have roiv cover. Halacha yuzayin. Another practical issue, new issue. Peiras oleh begin b'mayla. If you covered the entire schach with what do they call that? Like when it rains, they put something over it, or you put something under it, and you're putting it under. Now under it is not so simple. Under, if it's for noi sukkah, will tolerate a lot. But if it was put under the schach only to catch the leaves, they shouldn't fall into your food. That's a problem, psula. But if under the schach they place something for decoration, kosher. And one of the things we learned in this chapter is food is something that's makabel tuma. But under the schach, and the kalim. But why did you hang them? All for beauty. Because since it was placed, now 1 second. Let's go back to the previous chapter. No, it's even though they're kosher, but they're not counted at all. They're not counted at all. So if you have a sukkah that's 20 amas tall or more than 20 amas, you can't simply add noya sukkah. They don't count, but they diminish the size of the walls. So if I hang noya sukkah on my walls and I begin with a sukkah of 7 by 7, now I won't have a kosher sukkah. So, now, when we said that it doesn't create a problem because it was hung for beauty, it has to be within 4 tfachim, not 4 amas, 4 tfachim. No, if it's hung 4 tfachim or more psula, because then even though you hung it for beauty, under the decor, the decorations. And the decorations are not good for schach. Let's get flying, let's get moving. Schach that has many, many windows. So it's not that it's puzzle, it's just open. Not puzzle, it's just there's breaks. Parlechert, heilig in Yiddish. If it's 50-50, total, not good. And but then kshedo. That it's kosher since it's more than not. That's and I don't care where. Now a gavaldik kasha. What happens if I diminish that open yakir, but I did not put good schach? I filled it up with bad schach. Like Karamuk is now we have to go back to what we learned before. Remember what we learned before, right? If it's a sukkah gedola, in other words, that you have a full 7 by 7, then it's kosher. The ima sukkah ketana psula, Next, what happens if the sum total area, the sum total area is like patches. In one place, it's a lot of schach. The other place, you have to look at the sum total. Normally, the right way that Rambam is saying, by the way, we don't follow this, that the proper way of putting schach is light. We want it to be easy to see through. But if you made it mu'uva, even if it's kamin bias, you know what that means? Like it doesn't even rain through it. Doesn't matter. Next. No, it means it's uneven. It's on different heights. Kosher. When? Cannot have, it has to be less. But we're not done yet. But if any of these steps has a thickness of a tefach or more, even if it's more than 3 tvachim or more, amazing. So halachically it's all even. But for you to say P tikra yored the soisim, it has to be exactly aligned. You have to see a picture of this. Halacha based, make a sukkah on top of a sukkah. Rabbi Zajac looks mamash good that he slept like for an hour last night. Hatachtoina psula. Pashid. Because kimisha asa sukkah b'tei chabayis. The all yoinis kshera. But mad varam avodim that the tachtoina is psula. It's only b'shaya goy v'chalal all yoin asar tvacham yoiser. Guys, halka. And number one. Number two, the gag at tachtoina yachal lekabim krum shal yoina. It's strong. Even if it can only hold it al yedei atchak, but it's strong. But if the top one is not all 10, then we don't consider it to be a top one. Or that the schach in between is so weak. Then everything is kosher. Whether your grade is the af or not, it makes the same concept. But in other words, because we're saying that there isn't two, there's only one, the top one. But then you have to make sure that the top schach is not above 20 yamas. Same concept. If you have a bed that's inside the sukkah, if underneath the bed you have a full 10 tefachim, then sitting underneath the bed is not good because it's like a sukkah, and the bottom sukkah has no schach at all. And even if it would have schach, so what? That's the whole previous halach. Now, canopy. If the canopy has a roof, even if the roof was only wide 1 tefach, im gavasar tefachim, ein yishenim babasukkah. Since you have to sleep in a sukkah, then that's not called sleeping in a sukkah. You're sleeping in a sukkah, but techa sukkah. If you put up 4 beams, even worse. However, what will be good? But if you have 2 pillars, only 2 pillars, and you throw a sheet, it's like a teepee. It's a teepee. There's no roof. There's no tefach. Any type of canopy, she'ein begaga tefach. Afilu gvoim kol shehem. In other words, I don't care how high they are. They can be high. It means even if they're 10 tefachim, it's not little. Even if it's big. Why? Why? Final halach of this chapter is sukkah she'ula sheina. Because the lachem of lulav is not interpreted the same way by a sukkah. There cannot even be borrowed on the first day. Here, borrowed is good, and even gezula is kasher. Now, gezula is kasher because halachically it's karka ein exelis. He's explaining what gezula means. Ketza. Not that you stole the material and you built a sukkah. Someone built a sukkah and you kicked them out. V'chein taka im taka v'chaveiroi v'hoitzia misukasei ugzala meaning v'yashav v'yatza. In karka ein exelis. They didn't accomplish anything. In a karka ein exelis. Tim goes aleitzim v'asamem sukkah. Yatza. And the question is why? You have to give back to Eitzim. Guys, midday raisa, you would have to give back to Eitzim. And therefore, it would not be kosher. But remember, takonas meirosh, that when you steal a beam and you build it into a building, you don't have to give it, you only have to give back the value. Now it's yours. Now that it's yours, it's good. Sukkah, it's not flimsy, doesn't matter. You don't have to give it back. And more than that, even if the person stole Nisarim and he put them into a sukkah without affixing them, normally you would say during the year that if you did not affix it, you have to give back the beam proper, not on sukkahs. that Takanas Chachamim is during the Chag, you don't have to give it back. Final case of application of Karka in an Exelis, that if you make your sukkah in the Rosh Hashanah, Baiter Harei Zu Kisheira, even though the Karka is not yours, but you can't steal Karka. Shkoyach, to be continued. Wow.
Thank you, Rabbi Zajac. Wow.
This was great. This was a